Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Certainly, we are talking about an extraordinary number of people arriving into a very small area. Your reaction to what's happened in the last week?
Hi, Sally. Yes, I mean, what we're seeing here is really just some more evidence that we really didn't need any further evidence that the EU's approach to migration, its hostility to migration, and its approach that says that we can stop migration through hostility, through creating the risk of death, through the thousands and thousands of people who have drowned attempting to reach the EU in the lack of safe routes for them to do so, has failed and will always fail. Italy has a very hard right, extremist right-wing, anti-migrant prime minister. They've had her in post for over a year. She was elected on the promise of doing the impossible, of stopping migrants from who need safety from moving in order to get that safety. And here we see the result. Instead of planning for the arrival of migrants, a country like Italy, which has an aging population, desperately needs workers, could have planned and provided safe routes for people to arrive, to fill those jobs that it so desperately needs workers for, and saved so many lives. When instead they've said, we won't take anybody, we'll just stop the boats. And this is where it leads us. I think we can all take some lessons. You can't stop people from moving to try to find safety. These people need safety, and we're going to have to plan for their arrival and make it safe.
I think certainly Giorgia Meloni would probably disagree with you about her extremist views there. She does represent the views of many Italians who are concerned about these dangerous crossings and the number of people arriving into Italy. And when you think about, I mean, Ursula von der Leyen today in Lampedusa has said that the EU will decide who comes to Europe. Well, certainly, as we're seeing in Lampedusa, that isn't the case. Why is the might of the EU not winning against people smugglers, do you think?
Because you have a simple reality. What human beings have done since the dawn of time, where we can't live, we leave. You have a situation in Tunisia at the current time where there's a slide into autocracy. The government ministers have been inciting violent racist pogroms against Black sub-Saharan African migrants who've been living in Tunisia, people being hounded from their homes onto the streets, people being attacked in broad daylight by the authorities and by citizens, people being driven into the desert between Tunisia and Libya and dumped there, hundreds of people being subjected to these things, dozens dying of thirst in the desert. This has provoked people to escape. People, when they need safety, will move. And there isn't very much that, no matter how hard the rhetoric is from European politicians, Meloni and Ursula von der Leyen and others, simply can't prevent people from pursuing the hope of safety and a decent life. So as I say, the Italian situation is desperate. They're geographically located on the front line of this. They need workers. They have an aging population, the fastest aging population in Europe. They're desperately in need of people to go and live in the towns of theirs that are becoming depopulated. In fact, they have schemes where they'll sell you a house for €1 if you'll go and you'll build up that house and renovate it and live in one of these villages that are becoming depopulated. And at the same time, we have desperate people who need safety, who need to move, trying to get into Europe. And we're saying, no, not you. Well, I think this isn't going to work. It's just simply unrealistic, isn't it? And the tragedy is that people die doing it in the process of this. We've seen a 5-month-old baby drowned during this chaos over the last week. Europe needs to do better. We need to be protecting human life, planning for the fact that people will move, and making it so that our communities are able to welcome people.
So what would you propose to try and stop these dangerous boat crossings, which of course we're not just seeing into Italy, but we're also seeing across the Channel here into the UK as well?
Yes, well, certainly UK politicians should take note and take the lessons here. It doesn't matter how hard right you go about this. You can't stop people moving for safety. What we need to do is we need to provide people with alternative ways to make those journeys to safety. That means safe routes that are a real, meaningful alternative to getting into a boat with a smuggler. Because if people are willing to risk their lives, pay every last penny they have to escape for the chance of safety, then they will do it no matter what we do. I think Giorgia Meloni's suggestion is that the EU create a naval blockade of the Mediterranean. I don't know how long she thinks that should go on for. presumably in perpetuity. We can just seal off the continent forever. It's absurd. It's not going to work. The only solution is to provide these people with safe alternative ways to come here and spend the money, instead of spending it on sending it to governments like the Tunisian government that is responsible for so many human rights abuses, spend that money in our communities so that we have the infrastructure to receive people and to make the best of migration so that we all can benefit.
OK, Zoe Gardner, we really appreciate your thoughts today. Thanks very much for joining us.